I used to believe that if you opened your home with love, love would protect you in return. This house had been my sanctuary for over 30 years. Every wall carried memories, my late husband's laughter echoing down the hallway, my daughter's childhood height marks penciled beside the kitchen door, the quiet nights when grief and hope slept side by side. I worked 2 jobs to keep this place after my husband passed, refusing to sell it even when money was tight. This house wasn't just bricks and wood, it was my life. When my daughter married Ethan I truly believed God had answered my prayers. He was polite in the beginning, soft-spoken, always offering to carry groceries or fix a loose hinge. When they struggled financially after the wedding, I didn't hesitate. "Come stay with me," I said, "until you get back on your feet. Family helps family." That's what I taught my daughter. That's what my parents taught me. At first, it felt warm again, like the house had found its heartbeat. We ate dinner together. I listened to their plans, their dreams. Ethan would thank me, smile at me, call me Mom *. And every time he did, I felt a small sense of pride. I thought I had gained a son, but kindness can be a costume, and some people wear it until they feel safe enough to take it off. The change was slow, so slow I blamed myself for noticing it. Ethan stopped asking. He started telling. He decided where things should go, complained about my cooking, rolled his eyes when I spoke. The living room became their space. The kitchen became his territory. I started feeling like a guest in the home I paid for. Then came the comments, "You're too sensitive. This is how things are done now. You wouldn't understand." I laughed them off at first. I didn't want tension. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law. When my daughter avoided my eyes during his remarks, I told myself she was tired. Newly married life is stressful, I reasoned. Love requires patience, but patience should never cost your dignity. One evening, I overheard him on the phone. His voice was sharp, confident, nothing like the respectful tone he used around me before. "She doesn't have a choice," he said. "It's basically our house anyway." My hands froze over the sink. The water kept running, but my heart stopped. Our house. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how a man who owned nothing in this house had started acting like he owned me. How someone I trusted had slowly erased my place without ever asking permission. The yelling started weeks later. It wasn't constant. That's how control works. It arrives in bursts, so you doubt yourself. A slammed door here, a raised voice there, a glare that said "Don't challenge me, *." Once I asked him not to shout in my home. He stepped closer, too close. "This isn't just your house anymore," he said, his voice low and dangerous. You should remember that. I remember gripping the edge of the table to keep myself steady. I remember the silence afterward, thick, heavy, humiliating. And I remember my daughter standing behind him, eyes wet, saying nothing. That hurt more than his words. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself things would improve, that love would soften him, that my daughter would speak up. I kept cooking, cleaning, shrinking. I started locking my bedroom door at night, not because he had done anything but because my instincts were screaming. And instincts are the language of survival. I didn't know then that this man I had trusted would one day stand on my porch, screaming like a stranger, trying to break into my home. But deep down, something in me had already begun to prepare, because when respect leaves, courage must enter. And mine was just beginning to wake up. Fear doesn't arrive screaming. It whispers first. It settles into your bones quietly, convincing you that silence is safety, that endurance is strength. I had lived with that whisper for months, pretending I was strong because I was quiet, because I didn't fight back. Until the morning he finally showed me who he truly was. It started over something small. It always does. I had moved a box of old photo albums from the hallway to the spare room. They were in his way, he said. When he saw them, his face tightened like a knot pulled too hard. "Why do you keep touching my things?" he snapped. Your things. I almost laughed. Those albums held my husband's smile, my daughter's childhood years that existed long before he ever stepped foot inside this house. I was just cleaning, I said softly. I didn't mean, he cut me off. You never mean anything, but you always do it anyway. His voice rose. His hands moved wildly. Then came the sound I would never forget. The door to my bedroom, slamming so hard the walls trembled. "Stay out of my way," he shouted. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding so loud I was sure the neighbors could hear it. My daughter rushed in, trying to calm him, whispering, pleading. He shrugged her off like she was nothing. That's when he turned to me. "You're lucky I'm patient," he yelled. "Other people wouldn't tolerate this. Lucky." The word burned. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. In that moment, I realized I was afraid in my own home. And no mother, no woman, no human being should live like that. After they left for the day, the house felt eerily quiet. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a storm. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my hands, still trembling. I thought about my husband, how he used to stand between me and the world, how he promised I would always be safe. I thought about the sacrifices I made, the nights I cried alone, the strength I carried without applause. And then I thought about one simple truth, asterisk, asterisk, this house was mine. Asterisk, asterisk, I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't call anyone for permission. I picked up my purse, walked to the door, and drove straight to the locksmith. When the man asked why I needed the locks changed, I didn't tell him everything. I just said I need to feel safe again. He nodded like he understood more than I said. By the time I returned home, the locks were new. Solid, secure, the click of the deadbolt sounded different, stronger. Final, as I locked the door behind me, my legs gave out. I slid down against it, breathing hard, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of fear, tears of relief. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. I knew what I had done would cause an explosion. I knew he wouldn't accept it quietly. Men like him never do. But for once, I wasn't planning for his reaction. I was choosing myself. I made a cup of tea, though my hands still shook. I sat in the living room and waited. Not because I was scared, but because I was ready. An hour later, I heard the familiar sound of his car pulling into the driveway. The shouting started almost immediately. "What the hell is this?" he yelled, rattling the door handle. "Open this door right now." I didn't move. He banged harder. The door shuddered under his fists. "You think you can lock me out?" he screamed. This is my house, too. My heart raced, but I stayed seated. I had already made the call. I had already taken my power back. Then the noise stopped. For a moment there was silence, and in that silence I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The silence didn't last. It never does with men who believe the world should bend for them. I was still sitting in the living room when I heard his footsteps retreat from the porch. For a brief, foolish second, I thought he had left. That maybe, just maybe, he had realized he'd gone too far. Then I saw him through the window. He was pacing the driveway, phone pressed to his ear, his face twisted with rage. His voice carried through the glass, sharp and venomous. "She locked me out." He snapped, "Yeah, changed the locks. Can you believe that?" My stomach tightened, but I didn't move. I didn't hide. I stood slowly and walked toward the door, resting my hand against the solid wood, feeling the new lock beneath my fingers. It felt cold, strong. Minutes later he returned. This time he wasn't empty-handed. In his grip was a heavy metal breaker, long, brutal, unmistakable. The kind used to smash concrete or pry open steel. My breath caught in my throat. "Open the door," he roared, slamming his fist against it. "You don't get to do this, you hear me?" I stepped back, my heart racing, but my voice when I spoke was steady. "This is my house," I said through the door. "You're not welcome here." For a moment there was nothing. No shouting, no movement. Then he laughed. A dark, hollow sound that chilled me more than his yelling ever had. "You think a lock can stop me," he said. "I'll show you how things work." The first strike hit the door like thunder. The entire house shook. A picture frame crashed to the floor. I screamed despite myself, fear flooding my chest, but I didn't run. I didn't open the door. Instead, I did what I should have done long ago. I picked up my phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed, but the call went through immediately. I didn't need to explain much. The operator heard the blows, heard the shouting, heard the danger in my voice. "Help is on the way," she said calmly. Outside, neighbors began to gather. Curtains twitched, doors cracked open. His anger had an audience now, and he hated that. He struck the door again and again. Each hit echoed through the house, but the door held. The lock held, then something unexpected happened. A police siren wailed in the distance. At first, faint. Then closer, louder. He froze. "What did you do?" he shouted. I protected myself. I said, my voice firm. "Something you should have done." The color drained from his face as realization set in. He dropped the breaker, the metal clanging against the concrete like a verdict. But the sirens weren't the only thing coming. The truth was, I had prepared for this moment. Earlier that day, before changing the locks, I had visited a lawyer. I brought every document I had, deeds, receipts, proof of ownership. Everything had my name on it, not his. Not even my daughter's, and the police weren't coming alone. My attorney arrived shortly after, calm and composed, carrying a folder thick with truth. The officer spoke first, firm, controlled. "This property belongs to her," he said, gesturing toward me through the window. "You are not a legal resident." Ethan's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You lied to me," he hissed, glaring at my daughter, who had just arrived and stood frozen beside him. "No," I said quietly, "you assumed." That's when his secrets started spilling out, things he never thought would surface. Outstanding debts, complaints filed by previous landlords, a restraining order from a woman who once trusted him, just like I had. The strong man vanished. In his place stood someone small, cornered, exposed. Neighbors whispered. My daughter covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now, not for him, but for the truth she could no longer deny. He took a step back, then another, and then he ran. He didn't look back. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He fled like a coward from a door he couldn't break, and a woman he could no longer control. I leaned against the wall, my knees weak, but my spirit unshaken. The house was quiet again, but this time the silence felt like victory. That night I slept with the lights off for the first time in months. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I wasn't anymore. The house felt different after he ran. The air was lighter, as if something dark had finally been exhaled. The broken picture frame lay on the floor, glass scattered like the remains of an old life, but I didn't rush to clean it. Some messes deserve to be seen for what they are. My daughter sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying, but clearer than I had ever seen them. I didn't know. She whispered. I reached across the table and held her hands I had once held when she learned to walk, when she scraped her knees, when she learned that love sometimes hurts. I know, I said softly, but now you do. She cried then deep, broken sobs filled with guilt and grief. Not just for what he had done to me, but for the parts of herself she had lost trying to keep peace with a man who thrived on chaos. The police returned the next day to finalize the report. A restraining order followed soon after, legal words on white paper, but to me they felt like armor. Ethan tried to call, then text, then beg. His messages shifted from anger to apology to blame in a matter of hours. I never replied. Silence was no longer weakness. It was a boundary. That was my revenge. Weeks passed. The neighbors waved differently, now warmer, kinder. Some stopped to apologize for not intervening sooner. Others simply smiled, as if they had witnessed something sacred, a woman choosing herself. My daughter moved out not long after. Not back to him, but into a small apartment of her own. She started therapy, started laughing again. Started remembering who she was before fear taught her to shrink. And me. I reclaimed my home. I painted the walls a softer color. Planted flowers in the yard, where his shouting once echoed. I replaced the door, not because it was broken, but because I wanted something new. Something that belonged only to peace. Sometimes, late at night, I would run my fingers over the smooth surface of the new lock and smile not with bitterness, but with pride. He thought power meant control. He thought revenge meant destruction, but the sweetest revenge. It was sitting in my quiet living room, a cup of tea in my hands, knowing that no one would ever raise their voice at me here again. It was watching my daughter heal. It was learning that strength doesn't always roar sometimes. It simply locks the door and refuses to open it ever again. And every night, before I went to sleep, I whispered a quiet thank you, not to fate, not to justice, but to myself, for finally choosing peace.